Tracy Mox, and today I'm going to be talking about law enforcement and police officers. So many believe that police officers have too much power because of the instances with police brutality. What many don't know is that not all police officers contribute to these fearful environments. Being a part of a family full of law enforcement officers of all different types, I see a different side to them than many others do, because I know that not all law enforcement officers play a role in these brutal situations. Today, I'm going to go over the importance of understanding police officers a little bit more, learn why these harsh views of officers are happening and why they are, and discuss some of my own experiences. So first, let's talk about the media influences, because that plays a huge part of it. The media plays a huge role in why police officers are viewed as such a negative aspect of society. Media outlets all across the world are designed to choose large, controversial topics to discuss, and police officers tend to be one of those topics. Police officers are supposed to be known for their courageous acts and going into an honorable job, but the media is changing the overall look upon law enforcement. Using harsh videos, not fully explained statistics, and picking and choosing between the positive and negative stories, the media creates a darker image for police officers than many people believe. When discussing the topic about the whole story being told through the media, that isn't always the case. We want to hear about the change. We tend to hear about the changes in force being taken, but do we ever actually hear about the action being taken for that to occur? No, we don't. When looking into that entire topic of the full story being told, we tend to hear about the unfortunate events. However, we don't actually hear about the amazing things that are happening as well. So now that we've kind of talked about the main aspect of media influences, let's kind of discuss the controversial topic of force. So many believe that law enforcement officers use too harsh of punishment when dealing with certain cases and citizens. According to the retired police officer David Thomas of punishment, he states that the use of force is determined by the actions of the citizens that we encounter. So he's kind of explaining here that the amount of force being used that a police officer uses on an individual is dependent on the individual's actions. So in other words, a police officer doesn't use excessive force because they want to, but instead when they need to. So I'm going to kind of go here. So this is from the officer memorial page in the foundation. So this is kind of the line of duty deaths in the year of 2020. Yes, COVID-19 plays a huge role in that this year. Besides that point, there are some other causes of death for police officers in the line of duty this year. The top three being gunfire, automobile crashes, and vehicular assault. So especially vehicular assault and gunfire, these two are the main two causes of death in police officers in the line of duty towards them. So to kind of go off of that, the amount of force being used on an individual isn't because they want to use that amount of force. It's because in many cases they need to protect themselves. So they may have a firearm. They may have, they may be trying to lunge at an officer, things like that. And we don't always hear about that. So another thing that Thomas stated in his article is when he asked police officers what their job is, every single one of the officers answered with to protect and serve. So once again, a police officer overall goal isn't to hurt the people that reside in this community, however, to serve the people in this community that reside in it. In some cases, police officers do use excessive force, and that's not okay. I agree that some of these officers have gone too far and may have leaned towards another source of action, but that doesn't mean that all of these officers go under one category, that they're all bad and they have to pay for these consequences. So overall, the use of force is dependent on the person. But now that we move into the understanding of what an actual police officer's job is. So understanding the job of a police officer is really, really important. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 2015, 55.3 million people ages 16 and older have some sort of contact with law enforcement, meaning that People all over the United States, so many people come in contact with police officers. The overall role of a police officer is to protect and keep our community safe. Although some may disagree with this, officers go into a law enforcement job to help, not harm. Another reason understanding officers' jobs is so important is because we depend on them in society. We rely on police officers to help us keep us safe in bad situations. So now that we've kind of talked about that, let's move on to some of my personal experiences. So I have a ton of personal experiences when it comes to law enforcement because I grew up with a ton of police officers in my family. Watching my dad leave for a dangerous job every single day, not knowing when he's going to be coming home, is really, really nerve-wracking. There have been days where my dad has lost some of his best friends because they were harmed by the citizens that they were called to help. And that could have been my dad. And it's really upsetting thinking that I could have lost my dad because he went on a job thinking that he was going to help someone. Multiple times throughout my life, we've had to hide and get rid of certain things in my house as well. We've always had to take stickers off of our car. We've all had to hide our cars in our garage, and my dad actually has to hide his cruiser behind our house because people have taken advantage of that and vandalized our house before. So another story is while the riots were going on in Columbus, my dad got called out every day to help the officers in Columbus. But multiple times while this was happening, groups of people ran up on my dad to see how he would react in those situations. And they also wanted to make sure that he wasn't a Columbus police officer, so they weren't trying to damage or harm him. So in conclusion, not all police officers are bad people, even though they make the wrong decisions sometimes. The media plays a big role in why police officers are looked down upon. It's really important to understand the job of a police officer and know that the amount of force people use depends on the citizens that they deal with. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned some things.